Breaking news we're monitoring here at CNN. You see that airplane on the tarmac in Philadelphia, Southwest flight that was forced to make an emergency landing. Live pictures right now on the ground in Philadelphia. If you look at the left engine, the right of your screen, you can see some visible damage there, and the foam appears to be firefighting foam on the ground there. Emergency responders on the scene as well. It is hard to get information in these early moments, but let's bring in one of our aviation experts. Miles O'Brien is a CNN aviation analyst. He joins us on the phone from Boston. Miles, it's nice to see you, but not under these circumstances right here. As I see you on Skype, I thought you were on the telephone. Just looking at this, it's Southwest, so we know it's a 737. You can see some damage around that engine. Just from your expertise, what can you see, and what are your questions?
What we're seeing, John, is what's known as an uncontained engine failure. Jet engines fail more frequently probably than we all care to recognize. They're very reliable. But almost always when they fail, they're designed to fail so that all the parts stay internal or go out the tailpipe and not cause any further damage, making it sort of a non-event, which is why we don't hear about it so much. Every now and then, though, you get what's called an uncontained engine failure, where some piece or part escapes from the cowling of the engine. And this can be a very hazardous situation because essentially those are, pieces of shrapnel that come off at very high rates of speed and can easily pierce the skin of the aircraft. We've had some initial reports that might have happened in this case very early. I remember back in the mid-90s, there was a Delta flight in Florida, actually happened in Escambia County Airport in Pensacola, where an uncontained engine failure there caused the death of a passenger as a result. And that was on an MD-88, which is where the engines are tightly fitted right close to the fuselage in the back. In this case, the 737, you'd see it highlighted there. The left side, the engine hangs underneath the wing, and so the risk of jeopardy is slightly diminished because it's just farther away from the passengers. And the seating arrangement and window arrangement of these aircraft is designed so that if these things happen, people are not in harm's way. So that's what happened. Obviously, the aircraft is perfectly fine to fly on one engine, and it did, in fact, land safely. Obviously, the flight crew made the right decision and did an emergency evacuation, as you can see, based on all of this. And we will have to just see what sort of damage was caused to the aircraft, and more of greater concern, were any passengers injured by this shrapnel.
Right. To that point, Miles, stand by for me if you can. I want to bring CNN reporter Jason Carroll into the conversation. He's in New York. He has some details on where the plane was headed, and we do have reports, Jason, preliminary, at least one passenger perhaps injured?
That is correct, Miles. And let me just give a recount of what happened here. According to what we've learned, this was a Southwest Airlines flight 1380. It left this morning from New York City, initially headed to Dallas, and then suddenly when it was midway through the flight, something happened with one of the left engines. This according to a passenger who was on board that flight. He says once on board, something from the engine ended up injuring a passenger who was on board. We have calls out to emergency responders there on the ground, including fire, the FAA, airport as well. Again, this was a Southwest flight 1380, 737 from New York City, headed to Dallas. Just when they were apparently somewhere west of Philly, something happened with the left engine, and again, a passenger on board was injured. You can see the flight there on the tarmac. Emergency crews are there on the ground. We have calls out to fire, the FAA, the airport as well. As soon as we're able to get some more information, we're going to bring it to you as soon as we can.
Jason, I'll let you continue your reporting, Jason, and please come back as soon as you do have more information. I want to go back to Miles O'Brien, our aviation expert. Miles, I want to caution our viewers, often in the early moments, as you well know, the information you get, it turns out you either get additional information or the context can be a little tiny bit off. But if that information is indeed correct, I'm sorry, Miles, stand by for me. Christopher Johnson was a passenger on that flight. He joins me now on the phone. Christopher, please tell me, you were heading from New York to Dallas. What did you hear and what happened on that plane?
Yeah, hi, John. So we were leaving LaGuardia, heading to Dallas. We were west of Philadelphia, probably about 30,000 feet, and all of a sudden we just heard this loud bang. rattling, and then felt like one of the engines went out, the oxygen mask dropped, and then flight attendants did a good job. The pilot came on and said, we're diverting to Philadelphia, and, there wasn't a serious medical injury. I don't know much about that. But I was sitting in the front with a couple of passengers, and we just got the mask on, and as soon as we landed, we were thankful. The pilots did a great job. The crew did a great job. Got us down in Philly, and then that's when I took the photo of the engine, and it appeared that it just shredded the left side engine completely. So we were coming down. We dropped probably from 30,000 feet to 25,000 feet, and then the pilot just kind of regained control and brought it down safely to Philadelphia. And that's where so we got off the plane and on buses, and now we're trying to head over to the tarmac over in Philly.
And Christopher, as this played out, you were seated in front of where the engine would have been on the plane. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I was in the first row in the bulkhead, and I felt it on my side. So, and then as soon as we just kind of calmed down, and then got there were several medical people on board that tended to the injured passenger, but like I said, I don't know much more information about that. I just know it was pretty scary, but the pilots did a great job.
Christopher, appreciate that. I don't know if you can stand by for 1 second, but I want to get back to CNN's Jason Carroll, who has some additional information that I believe is statement. Jason, step in.
Right. Well, first of all, we can tell you that, again, that flight left from LaGuardia Airport. It was bound for Dallas. It left at 10:43 a.m. this morning. It was supposed to land at 1:43, and according to a passenger that we spoke to on board, apparently there was an issue with the left engine. A bit of shrapnel, flew off from the left part of that engine, ended up somehow injuring a passenger on board. We do now have a statement from Southwest Airlines. I want to read part of it to you. It says, we are aware that Southwest Flight 1380 from New York, LaGuardia to Dallas Love Field has diverted to Philadelphia International Airport. We are in the process of transporting customers and crew into the terminal. The aircraft, a Boeing 737-700, has 143 customers and 5 crew members on board. We are in the process of gathering more information. Safety is always our top priority at Southwest Airlines, and we are working diligently to support our customers and crews at this time. Once again, you can see the aircraft there on the tarmac. It appears as if the passengers have already been evacuated. And once again, a passenger who was on board that flight says there was an issue with the left engine. He says a bit of shrapnel flew off from that left part of the engine and somehow ended up injuring a passenger on board. Again, we are efforting more information, John. As soon as we're able to bring it to you, we will.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate the reporting. Please come back when you have more. I want to go back to Christopher Johnson, who was a passenger on that plane. And Christopher, we're showing a photo you took out the window that shows clear damage to that engine. To the point Jason Carroll was just making, I may be asking you a question you cannot answer, but when you heard the big bang, did you see anyone injured on the plane? And was there a breach? Did shrapnel break a window or break through the plane in any way?
From what I'm hearing, from passengers from the backside, it did breach, but as far as I wasn't there, so I didn't see exactly what happened.
You didn't see exactly what happened. We appreciate that. Christopher, stay with us if you could. I just want to update our viewers. 143 passengers, 5 crew members on that plane. You're listening to the passenger Christopher Johnson, who's crediting the crew and the pilots for being calm in the middle of all this. Miles O'Brien is still with us on Skype. Our aviation expert Peter Getz joining us as well on Beeper. Miles, I just want, now that you heard from Jason Carroll and you hear Christopher Johnson describing what happened here, one passenger injured from one account, and again, often these initial accounts, we get additional information, an injury on board and possibly some breach from shrapnel. Is that how you're taking it so far?
Well, I think that could be the supposition here. You have
Right.
what would cause the injury. I suppose that the rapid descent, if seatbelt wasn't on, there could have been an injury caused as a result of that. So we need to take this one step at a time. This is an uncontained engine failure. Shrapnel does indeed spin out at very high rates of speed when this happens, and that can breach the skin of the aircraft and cause injuries. There was a double fatality involving a Delta aircraft in the mid-90s. Similar situation. This was actually on the ground in that case. What is kind of unusual is when these events happen at cruise. The The engines are most stressed on takeoff when they're near full throttle. And failures tend to happen in those circumstances. That's when you're stressing it the most. When the aircraft is at cruise and the throttles are back, less likely to happen. But then again, there's a lot of moving parts that are moving very quickly in a jet engine, and one failure can, tip some dominoes and cause a failure like this. Generally speaking, though, they're well designed to contain all that shrapnel. So when they fail, it stays inside or goes out the tailpipe. In this case, it did not, and we can only hope that the whatever injuries there are not too serious.